My name is Daniel Crawford, and I need to tell you about the night that shattered everything I believed about my life. It happened at a family dinner in one of those pristine suburban homes in Edina, just outside Minneapolis, where the lawns are perfectly manicured and the secrets are buried deeper than the Minnesota winter snow. To continue listening to this beautiful and special story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Write your name and the city you're watching from so I can include a special greeting for you in a future story. Chapter 1: The Dinner. I should have skipped. The invitation came from my ex-wife Sarah's sister Linda. Family dinner, she said. Emma really wants you there. That should have been my first red flag. Emma was 16, and the last thing teenagers want is their divorced parents in the same room, breathing the same air, pretending everything's fine. But I went anyway. I always went when it came to Emma. The November wind was cutting through my jacket as I walked up to Linda's sprawling colonial. Through the golden windows I could see the warm glow of the dining room, people already seated around that massive oak table. My stomach twisted the way it always did before these family gatherings, like I was walking into enemy territory wearing the wrong uniform. Sarah answered the door. Even after 3 years of divorce, seeing her still felt like looking at a photograph of someone I used to know, intimately but could barely recognize anymore. Her blonde hair was shorter now, more sophisticated. Her smile was polite, distant. Daniel, you made it. I said I would. The house smelled like roasted turkey and that expensive candle Linda always burned, something called Autumn Harvest, that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I could hear Emma's laugh coming from the dining room, bright and genuine in a way it rarely was when we were alone together. That laugh used to be mine. When she was little, I was the one who could make her giggle until she got hiccup. Now, at 16, I felt like I was constantly auditioning for the role of father in her life, never quite sure if I was getting the part. Chapter 2: The Table Where I Didn't Belong. Walking into that dining room was like entering a scene from someone else's life. The table was set for 12, and somehow, every seat seemed to have an assigned person, except mine. Linda's family, Sarah's parents, a few cousins I recognized, and then, him. I'd never seen this man before, but he was sitting in what used to be my spot when Sarah and I were married, right next to Emma, mid-40s maybe, with graying temples and the kind of confident posture that comes from never doubting your place in the world. "Oh, Daniel," Linda called out, too bright, too cheerful. "Come sit down, we saved you a spot." The spot was at the far end of the table. The kids' table end, if there had been kids. I was 42 years old, and I was being relegated to the corner like a distant relative nobody really wanted to invite. Emma looked up when I walked in, and for a split second, her face lit up the way it used to. Dad. But then her eyes darted to the man beside her, and something shifted. That light dimmed, like someone had adjusted a thermostat. "Hey, sweetheart." I kissed the top of her head as I passed. Her hair smelled like that shampoo she'd been using since she was 12. Vanilla and something flowery. Some things never change, even when everything else does. The man beside her extended his hand as I passed. "You must be Daniel, I'm Mark." His grip was firm, the kind of handshake that makes a statement. "Emma's told me so much about you." That's when the first crack appeared in my chest. Emma had told him about me. Who was he that my daughter was discussing me with him? Chapter 3: The Conversation That Cut Deep. Dinner conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. Talk about Emma's junior year, her college plans, her recent interest in photography. I tried to contribute, but every time I opened my mouth, someone else was already speaking. "Emma's been taking the most amazing photos," Sarah was saying to Marcus. "Show him the one from the lake." Emma lit up, pulling out her phone with an enthusiasm I hadn't seen in months. She scrolled through her photos, leaning closer to Marcus as she showed him her work. The same photos she'd been reluctant to show me just last weekend during our awkward father-daughter lunch at Applebee's. "This one's incredible," Marcus said, and I could hear genuine admiration in his voice. "You've got a real eye for composition. Have you thought about applying to art school?" Art schools? This was the first I was hearing about Emma's interest in photography, as anything more than a hobby. When had my daughter started having dreams I didn't know about? "Marcus thinks I should apply to the Art Institute of Chicago," Emma said, glancing around the table but somehow not quite meeting my eyes. "He knows someone in admissions." Of course he did. Marcus probably knew someone everywhere. He had that look, successful, connected, the kind of man who could open doors with a phone call. I took a sip of my wine, trying to wash down the bitter taste in my mouth. The Minnesota wind was rattling the windows, but inside this warm, golden dining room, I felt like I was on the outside looking in. Chapter 4: The Moment Everything Shifted. The meal was winding down when I finally worked up the courage to speak up. The conversation had moved on to Thanksgiving plans, and I realized with growing panic that nobody had asked about my time with Emma over the holiday weekend. "Emma," I said, my voice probably a little too loud, "would you like to sit over here with me for dessert? We haven't had a chance to really talk." The request hung in the air like smoke. I saw Sarah's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Linda's eyes darted between Emma and me like she was watching a tennis match. Emma hesitated. "Oh, Dad, I'm comfortable." "Come on," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Your old man misses talking to you." That's when Sarah spoke up, her voice carrying that edge it got when she was about to shut something down. "Daniel, she's fine where she is. Don't make this about you." The words hit like a slap. Make this about me? I was asking to sit next to my own daughter. When had that become making things about me? But then Marcus stood up. The entire table went quiet. He wasn't a tall man, but something about the way he carried himself commanded attention. He looked at me, really looked at me, with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Actually," he said, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority, "I insist." Chapter 5: The Silence That Spoke Volumes. The words hung in the air like a challenge. "I insist." Not "of course," or "sure," "Daniel," or even "that's a nice idea." I insist. Like he had the authority to insist on anything involving my daughter. Emma's eyes went wide. Sarah's face went completely pale. Even Linda, who always had something to say, was struck speechless. Marcus looked around the table, his gaze steady and sure. Emma should sit with her father. Family time is important. The way he said her father made my blood run cold. There was something in his tone, not dismissive. Exactly, but like he was humoring a child, like he was being generous in acknowledging my role in Emma's life. Emma slowly stood up, gathering her napkin and water glass. "Okay," she said quietly. "Dad, I'll come sit with you." As she walked around the table toward me, I caught the look that passed between Marcus and Sarah. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. But I saw it. Recognition, understanding, the kind of look that passes between people who share something deeper than dinner conversation. Emma settled into the chair beside me, but her body language was all wrong. She was perched on the edge of her seat like she might need to make a quick escape. When I put my arm around her shoulders the way I had 1,000 times before, she went rigid. "Dad," she whispered, "you're making this weird." I was trying to connect with my daughter at a family dinner. When had normal father-daughter affection become weird? Chapter 6. The questions I should have asked years ago. The drive home through the dark Minneapolis suburbs was torture. The streetlights cast long shadows across the snow-covered lawns, and every familiar landmark felt foreign somehow. I kept replaying Marcus's voice in my head. "I insist." The confidence in those 2 words bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Back in my apartment, the small 2-bedroom place I'd moved to after the divorce, I poured myself a whiskey and tried to piece together what I'd witnessed. Who was Marcus? How long had he been part of Emma's life? And why was this the first time I was meeting him? I thought about all the times over the past year when Emma had seemed distracted during our visits. The phone calls she'd take in another room. The way she'd light up when talking about things I wasn't part of. I'd attributed it to typical teenage behavior. But now I wasn't so sure. The next morning I called my lawyer, Jim Hartley. We'd worked together during the divorce, and he'd been straight with me then. I needed someone to be straight with me now. "Jim, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. During the divorce proceedings, was there ever any mention of paternity issues? Any reason to question whether Emma was biologically mine?" The pause on the other end of the line lasted too long. "Daniel, that's a hell of a question to ask 3 years after the fact." "That's not an answer." Another pause. "There were some inconsistencies in the timeline Sarah provided, but you never asked us to pursue it. And frankly, you seemed more interested in ensuring you maintained a relationship with Emma than in questioning the biological connection." My hand was shaking as I held the phone. What kind of inconsistencies? Chapter 7: The Timeline That Didn't Add Up. Jim's files told a story I'd been too afraid to read 3 years ago. Sarah had been working late a lot during the time Emma would have been conceived. There had been a business trip to Chicago that lasted longer than originally planned. Phone records showing frequent calls to a number I didn't recognize. The man's name was Marcus Richardson. Jim said, reading from his notes. He was working on the same marketing campaign as Sarah. Divorced. No kids of his own. Marcus Richardson. The same Marcus who had insisted my daughter sit with me last night. The same Marcus who knew people in college admissions and could speak with authority about Emma's future. I felt sick. "Why didn't you tell me this during the divorce?" "You never asked, Daniel. And honestly, you seemed so focused on keeping Emma in your life that I didn't think you wanted to know. Sometimes ignorance is a blessing." But ignorance hadn't been a blessing. It had been a 3-year lie I'd been living with my eyes wide shut. That afternoon, I drove to Sarah's house. The same house we'd bought together when Emma was 5. In one of those tree-lined neighborhoods where kids still rode bikes to school and neighbors borrowed cups of sugar. Sarah's car was in the driveway, along with a silver BMW I didn't recognize. Sarah answered the door, wearing yoga clothes and a guilty expression. "Daniel, what are you doing here? We need to talk about Marcus, about Emma, about the truth." Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, anger, resignation. "Emma's at school. This isn't the time." "When is the time, Sarah? When she graduates? When she gets married? When am I going to stop being the only one who doesn't know what's really going on here?" Chapter 8. The truth that changed everything. Sarah let me in, but she didn't invite me to sit down. We stood in the living room where Emma had taken her first steps, where we'd opened Christmas presents as a family, where I'd read her bedtime stories until she was too old to want them anymore. "How long have you known?" I asked. Sarah's composure cracked. "Known what? Don't do this, Sarah. Don't make me say it. How long have you known that Emma might not be mine?" She closed her eyes and took a shaky breath. When she opened them again, there were tears. "Since she was born." The words hit me like a physical blow. Since she was born. 16 years of birthdays, school plays, soccer games, goodnight kisses, and bedtime stories. 16 years of being a father to a child who might not be mine biologically, while the woman I loved, the woman I'd trusted with my heart and my future, had known the truth all along. "Marcus is her biological father, isn't he?" She nodded, unable to speak. "And he's been in her life this whole time?" "Not this whole time. He reached out about a year ago. He wanted to meet her, to be part of her life. A year ago, right around the time Emma started becoming distant with me. Right around the time our weekends together started feeling forced and awkward." "Does Emma know?" Sarah's silence was answer enough. "Jesus Christ, Sarah. Does Emma know that Marcus is her biological father and I'm... what am I to her now? You're her dad, Daniel. You raised her. You were there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, but she knows the truth. And I've been walking around like an idiot for the past year, trying to figure out why my own daughter feels like a stranger." Chapter 9. The choice I never saw coming. That night, Emma came to see me. She knocked on my apartment door at 8 p.m., still in her school clothes, her eyes red from crying. "Mom told me you know," she said before I could even say hello. I let her in, and we sat on my couch, the same couch where we'd watched Disney movies when she was little, where she'd fallen asleep during countless Friday night movie marathons. "I wanted to tell you," she said, her voice small and broken. "But Marcus said it would hurt you and Mom said it would complicate things. And I didn't know how." Looking at her I could see it now, the shape of her eyes, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. Features I'd attributed to Sarah's side of the family suddenly made sense in a different context. "How long have you known?" I asked. "Since I was 14. Marcus showed up one day after school. Mom was there, and they sat me down and explained everything. About how they'd worked together and how they'd had a relationship. And how you'd been amazing but you weren't, I wasn't your biological father." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "But you were my dad. You are my That never changed for me. I swear it didn't. But then Marcus started coming around more. And he was so interested in everything I was doing. And he had all these ideas about my future. And he could give you things I couldn't. It's not about things, Dad. It's about, he looks at me and sees potential. He sees this whole future for me that I never even imagined. Art school, internships, travel. He has connections and experience, and I'm just the guy who taught you to ride a bike and helped with your math homework." She broke down then, really sobbing. "I love you, Dad. I love you so much, and I hate that this is happening. I hate that there has to be a choice, but there did have to be a choice. I could see that now." Chapter 10. The decision that set us both free. 3 weeks later, I took Emma to breakfast at our old spot, a diner called Mickey's in St. Paul, where we'd been going since she was 8 years old. The same red vinyl booths, the same waitress who remembered Emma liked her pancakes with extra whipped cream. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her as we waited for our food. "About Marcus seeing your potential." Emma looked nervous, like she was bracing for a fight, and I realized something. The best thing a father can do, biological or not, is want what's best for his child, even when it's not what's best for him. Dad, let me finish. Marcus can give you opportunities I can't. He can open doors, make connections, help you build the kind of future you deserve. And I've been so afraid of losing you that I haven't been able to see that clearly. The pancakes arrived, but neither of us touched them. I'm not disappearing from your life, I continue. I'm not giving up on being your dad, but I'm also not going to stand in the way of the relationship you're building with Marcus. You deserve to have both of us, if that's what you want. Emma reached across the table and took my hand. What if I mess it up? What if I hurt you? What if I hurt him? Then you'll figure it out. That's what growing up is, making mistakes and figuring things out. But you don't have to choose between loving Marcus and loving me. Love isn't finite, Emma. There's enough room in your heart for both of us. The relief in her eyes was worth every moment of pain I'd felt over the past 3 weeks. For the first time in over a year, my daughter looked at me without guilt or confusion or the weight of secrets. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kiddo. Always have. Always will. That's not changing. As we finally started eating our pancakes, I realized that letting go doesn't mean giving up. Sometimes it means loving someone enough to trust them to make their own choices, even when those choices include people who aren't you. Marcus wasn't my enemy. He was just another person who loved Emma, and she was lucky to have that. I was lucky too, to have been her dad for 16 years, and to continue being her dad for whatever came next. The truth hadn't destroyed us. It had freed us both.